Good morning. My name is Pam Dukeman. I am the Assistant Town Administrator, Finance Director for the Town of Westwood. Each year at town meeting, we provide you with a background and overview of the town's finances to help serve as a background to the financial articles that you're asked to vote at town meeting. This year, due to the COVID restrictions, our town meeting will again be outside on Flay High Field, and so we will not be doing the presentation at town meeting. Instead, we are doing this pre-recording of the presentation. I would like to thank Westwood Media for their assistance in doing this presentation, particularly Connor Lynch for all their help and for all their help throughout this past year with helping the town continue on with our budget and town meeting process through all the various Zoom meetings that have occurred. The material we will be reviewing is all included in the town meeting warrant book that you will receive at home. There is more material in the book than we will go through in this presentation. However, we would like to go through some material with you in this format, but we encourage you to look through that book at the extended material. In addition, there have been multiple presentations on the town's finances and the FY22 budget throughout the year, as our Select Board and Finance and Warrant Commission has been working on the budget since last fall. So all of the presentations made at those various meetings are on the town's website, as well as all of the recordings of those meetings are available on the Westwood Media site. Our Select Board is committed to a transparent process with all of the town's finances. So there's a significant amount of material available on the town's website, and we encourage you to take a look at that. Now we will start the walkthrough of some of that financial material. As we start, it's important to remember that the financial articles at town meeting address all areas of the town's finances. Our operating budget, which is our most important area and really the most visible to the community, that's our school and police and fire departments. But we also have to make sure that we're looking at our capital budget. It's important we maintain all of our capital equipment, that we're providing sufficient funding to maintain our buildings. The capital equipment is very important to our public safety and DPW departments in providing their services. We also have to look at our long-term liabilities and make sure we're addressing those. And those would include our OPEB and pension obligations. We're looking at our reserve accounts. What do we have in our savings accounts? An important component to the town's credit rating and to protect the town. We're looking at service levels. We want to make sure that we're always maintaining the quality of services provided in town and not fluctuating up and down in those areas. And we're trying to balance all of that on the tax bill impact. So it's really a balance of many needs every year with our budget articles at town meeting. It is not an easy balance. The Select Board, our Finance and Warrant Commission, and town meeting have worked very hard over the last several years to make sure that the budgets presented are comprehensive, well-balanced, and address all of these areas. Looking first at revenue. The FY22 projected budget revenue is $108 million. That's a 2.5% increase over the current year. The pie chart shows the components of our revenue. Obviously, shown in the blue, our taxes are our main source of revenue. 80% of our revenue comes from our real estate tax base, so about $86 million for FY22. We have a much lower reliance on state aid. Shown in the gray slides here, about 6% of our budget comes from state aid. This is a very typical pie chart for a suburban community in Massachusetts. If you were to see this same revenue pie chart for one of the large cities in Massachusetts, it would look quite different with a much higher reliance on state aid. But we are heavily reliant on our taxes. It's how we fund our services. This is always a very challenging model. Our property tax revenue is restricted by Proposition 2.5 guidelines. And again, we're always trying to balance what we want to do in services for the community against that tax bill impact. Looking at taxes, as they are our main source of revenue, the next several slides look at taxes in different ways. This first one just shows simply how our tax levy is calculated under Proposition 2.5. Proposition 2.5 is a pure formula driven revenue. It is not based really on what we might need or want as the community. It's strictly a formula. We're showing here the formula for the FY22. Our base levy limit for FY22 simply starts with our limit from the prior year. So for FY22, $83 million. We are then allowed to increase that by 2.5%. So for FY22, just over $2 million. We can then add in estimates of new tax growth. So that would be any new development in town. And we're showing estimates here of $450,000 for general growth and $100,000 for University Station. Since the onset of University Station, we have shown this new growth in a separate line so that people can track what's coming in from University Station versus other development in town. If we were to have the general override, it comes next in the line on the formula. And then we total at our levy limit for FY22, $85.7 million. We then, under Prop 2.5, add to that any exempt debt. This is the exact principal and interest for any debt that was approved outside of 2.5. That totals down to what is called our maximum levy capacity. $86.8 million is what we could tax in FY22. Shown in the red circle is what we are actually planning to tax to balance out our budget, $86.5 million. The final line here shows what is called unused tax levy. So taxes that town meeting could have spent, but is not spending under the limits of Prop 2.5. And if you look back over the last several years, you see that we do not tax to our maximum capacity under 2.5. So prior years, we've had $800,000, just over $1 million in FY19. The $225,000 at this point is our budget estimate. We expect that unused levy number to grow as these actual new tax growth come in higher than our original estimates. The new tax levy growth, the new tax growth will be certified not until next fall of 2021. And when that is finalized, we'll have our actual number here for unused tax levy. So the town has not taxed to maximum capacity for several years. We've not had a general override since 2007. Looking at commercial taxes. Commercial taxes is a very important component to the town's finances. As shown on the left, commercial value in the current year is about 14.7% of the town's value. But because the town has what's called a split tax rate, we charge our commercial property at a higher rate than our residential. Commercial property actually in the current year pays 25% of the taxes. So because they're charged at a higher rate, they're 14% of value, but paying, as seen on the right here, 25% of that total tax levy. That is really a significant benefit to our homeowners from the split tax rate. We're showing here an actual tax bill for in FY21 for a residential home valued at about $760,000. That tax bill is $9,998. If we did not have the split tax rate, that bill would be significantly higher. It would be just over $11,300, almost a 14% increase in the tax bill. So this split tax rate provides significant tax relief to our homeowners, about $1,374 in the current year, or 14%. So very important to every resident. One thing that's often misunderstood about Proposition 2.5, people think it controls their individual tax bill, that their home's tax bill cannot go up more than 2.5%. And that is simply not how the formula works. Proposition 2.5 controls the total taxes that the town can collect, but does not control the individual tax bills. So we looked at the chart on the previous slides. That formula controls the total amount the town can raise, but each individual tax bill is based on their change in value. So this chart here shows that $676,000 home, having just over the $9,900 tax bill as shown in green. In FY21, our total property value, residential value, went up by 2.7%. This sample home actually increased in value higher than that, 3.3%. And they had a tax increase of about 4.4%. Again, every home changes at an individual difference in value. We're showing here in this chart at the bottom a sampling of many actual homes in Westwood at different home values. So at the chart at the top, we're showing a home value at $1.9 million. They actually had a slight decrease in their value for FY21, and they had a pretty flat change in their actual tax bill for FY21. You can see that there's all kinds of variations in homes. A home here at $909,000 increased up to $954,000, or a 5% increase. That home actually had a 6.9% increase in taxes. A home here at the bottom, $588,000, had an increase to $615,000, 4.5% increase in value, and a corresponding 6.4% increase in tax bills. That's actually my home here listed at the bottom. So I do understand that this can be a difficult aspect of Prop 2.5, that not every home receives the same change in their tax bill rate. It's really based on what happened to your home value, and often different neighborhoods or different price points of homes change at different values compared to others. It does result in this different increase in tax bills. But that is how property taxes are valued in Massachusetts. Your values are based on what's happening with sales in your neighborhood or your corresponding type of homes. It is important to note that Westwood has a program to help our senior residents with that impact of tax bill increase. So we have a program called the Aid to the Elderly Tax Fund. The town adopted this state option program in 1999. It's a program to help our long-term elderly and disabled residents remain in their homes by paying a portion of their tax bills. It is funded through donations and a town supplement. The bar graph shows the total amount distributed each year through this program. And you can see in FY21, our recent year, $95,000 was distributed to this program. The program typically assists about 45 to 55 residents each year. Our typical recipient is about 87 years old, has lived in Westwood for over 50 years, currently is in a home value at less than $600,000. Since its inception 22 years ago, this fund has contributed almost $900,000 out to seniors in our communities. So the town has always helped our seniors remain in the town, and will continue to do so. Next, looking at University Station. University Station revenue has been a tremendous help to our budget process and to the town's finances. We're often asked, how much have we received from University Station and where have we spent that money? So we have a couple of slides on that and several more in the town meeting book. This page shows the new tax revenue coming in from University Station. So this chart shows since FY15, how much in additional taxes have we received each year from University Station. So you can see the amount each year coming online. Totals through FY21, $6.4 million. In new tax revenue. Even before the project came online, we were looking at how could we best use that revenue to address multiple areas of our budget. And we're showing that by the graphic on the bottom, that we knew we needed to first cover on the left here, the impact of direct service cost. The project we knew would have impact on what we had to do for services, particularly on our public safety departments, as there'd be new residents and new activity down there. We next wanted to make sure we could help our operating budgets, our town and school budgets, providing the main services to the community. As we mentioned, it's often very hard under the Prop 2.5 restrictions to provide those budgets with what they need to give the services to the community that our residents desire. We knew we could use University Station revenue to help support those budgets. We also looked at our debt service and capital needs, that we could use University Station revenue to help keep debt projects within Proposition 2.5 and not have to go for debt exemption overrides. And then we also knew, how could we use some of this money to help with general tax relief, provide some effort to mitigate the growth of the tax bill to our residents. How have we actually used it? That was the plan. We have been able to apply this money as was originally planned. So here is exactly how the money from University Station has been used. First, we have used that to support the operating budgets, the school and municipal budgets. $2.68 million of that University Station growth has gone to this area, with the majority of that going to the school budget, $1.94 million. So our core services have been enhanced without the need for a Prop 2.5 override. Very specifically, this means $1.94 million of our current school budget has come from University Station revenue. If we did not have that revenue or did not use it for our budget, we would either have to have had an override to have that approximately $2 million in the school budget, or we would have to reduce the school budget by that corresponding amount. So the number one thing we've done with our money from University Station is support our school budgets and our school operations. Next, that increase in direct impact. $1.9 million of the money has gone to that. Here, it's the municipal budgets who have received the most in that category. $1.6 million has been added to our public safety departments to help with the increase in direct services from that project. So again, we've been able to use the project revenue to cover what we needed there without hurting other areas of our budget. Specifically, this $1.6 million has been used to increase the staffing levels in our public safety departments. We have added, with the University Station funding, 23 positions to our police and fire departments, specifically 14 new firefighter positions, 7 new police positions, and 2 new dispatch positions. Those are very important increases in the staffing level to those departments. Again, we would not have been able to do that without going for an override to the community. Third, we have used funding to help keep capital projects within Proposition 2.5. $975,000 was used as a one-time revenue for the Flay High Field turf replacement done a couple of years ago. We have also used other funding, approximately $800,000 for the debt service for the police station project. So that new building was able to be built and come online without the need for a Prop 2.5 override. And finally, each year we have left some of this funding as unused tax levy. This provides budget relief to the community and helps have the University Station revenue subsidize the residential revenue for the tax bills. So it has helped to mitigate the increase in our tax bills by keeping these items within Proposition 2.5. So again, more information in our town meeting book, but the majority of the Westwood Station money used in our school budgets to add police and fire positions and to keep debt within Proposition 2.5. Now looking at the expenditure side of the budget. FY22 expenditures, $108 million, a 2.5% increase. The pie chart shows the different categories of that total spending. By far, the bulk of our spending, shown in blue, is for our school and municipal operating budgets, the one-year operations from July 1st to June 30th each year. Almost 67% of our money is based on that. That's where we provide the main core services to the community. 80% of that budget is salary-based. We provide our operations through our school teachers, our police, fire, DPW employees. So the bulk of our spending is for our service to the community, through our school and municipal operations, and through our staffing. Other categories of spending shown in yellow are fixed cost benefits, 17% of total spending. That's where we provide for health insurance, pension obligations, our general insurance for our buildings and liabilities, our payroll taxes, all of that about 17% of our spending. Our debt service, shown in red, is about 6% of our total spending. So by far the largest area of our spending is our operating budgets, where we provide the core services to the communities. Our goal is always to strive for stability to those budgets. We do not want to have large fluctuations up and down, always adding in and laying off staff. We try to keep those very consistent and stable, and we strive for sustainable budgets. So we strive to not build those budgets bigger than what we can sustain going forward. Looking a bit further at that operating budget. So the operating budget that will be voted at town meeting is $101 million, as shown in the chart, a $3 million or 3.1% increase over the current year. The chart shows the breakdown of those components. You can see, as I mentioned, the school budget at $50 million, by far the largest component of the operating budget. That will receive the largest increase, $1.6 million or a 3.4% increase. The next largest increase is that fixed cost budget category, just over $930,000 increase or a 5% increase. And then the municipal budget, $686,000 increase or a 3.1% change. Again, the bar graph here on the bottom shows the components of the $101 million operating budget. Shown in blue, the school budget categories, by far our largest area of spending. Municipal in red, $22.3 million. Fixed cost, 18.5, and then in green, our debt service, 5.7. This distribution of spending is very standard for a suburban community in Massachusetts with a high-performing school district. Often, those communities always have that the school component is the largest component of spending for the community. Again, the goal is to have stable and sustainable operating budget growth for these departments. Next, looking at capital. It's very important for the town to continue to reinvest in our buildings, equipment, and our assets. We want to make sure that our buildings are well maintained and are safe, particularly for the schools, provide their services through their facilities, and that our equipment is safe. Our public safety departments, police, fire, and DPW are heavily reliant on equipment to provide their services. We want to make sure that we have safe and efficient equipment for them to do so. The bar graph shows our annual spending on our base capital for school and municipal. You can see we have a financial policy that shows with this blue line what we should be spending on capital. It should be about $2.6 million. The bar graph shows how much we have been spending each year. You can see that about 10 years ago, we were spending about $800,000 in this area, far below our goal. Our Board of Selectmen, Finance and Warrant Commission, and Town Meeting have steadily increased our spending on capital. We are now up to closer to our goal and a more acceptable level of spending on capital. So $2.3 million for the last couple of years, and we are planning $2.3 million as proposed, as shown in green, for the FY22 budget that will be presented at Town Meeting. So we could not meet our target for several years during difficult economic cycles. We have made steady progress in building that up. We are now at more appropriate levels of spending for school and municipal base capital, and we will continue to do so in the 22 budget. We have, since FY17, done an additional capital article each year at Town Meeting for spending above those base capital articles. So the effort has been to kind of catch up on those years that we were not meeting our goal, on projects that were deferred, and also to address larger items that do not easily fit into those base capital articles. The bar graph shows how much we have done each year in that additional capital at Town Meeting. As shown in green, we are proposing just over a $1 million article at Town Meeting, similar to what we did in the current year, FY21. What have we done with this each year in those articles? Prior years, we've done projects such as a large school IT network project. We did the high school tennis court lighting. We've also done some substantial projects for the Thurston School and the Senior Center HVAC work. In FY22, what we're proposing with this $1 million is two items: to replace the multi-purpose turf field at the high school, the field in the back of the parking lot, for $750,000, and then some necessary repairs to the pool for $310,000. So again, this additional capital article each year has been to do some larger projects, kind of town-wide projects. And here we are using funding such as free cash or the meal and hotel tax revenue. An important area of the town's finances is our debt service and our borrowing. We do have a couple of slides on this because this is such an important area. The debt helps us to build large buildings, fund larger projects. So it's a very important component. The bar graph shows the total debt the town has outstanding at the end of each fiscal year. So shown in green at the end of FY21, about $30 million. We have had a very favorable borrowing climate. We have a very strong credit rating. We hold a AAA rating with Standard & Poor's and a AA1 from Moody's. Excellent credit ratings for a small community. The interest rate has remained a very great environment to issue debt. The town just recently issued some debt about 2 weeks ago in March. We had a debt sale. We sold a $7.75 million long-term bond. There were some 10-year and 20-year term components of that bond. We received a net 1.14% interest rate for that debt. So very low interest rates to borrow a significant amount of money for a long-term period. We also, in that sale, sold a $4.45 million short-term one-year note. We received a 0.249% interest rate for that one-year note. Again, excellent rate to be able to borrow that amount of money for 1 year at that low interest rate. This bond sale, the 7.75, also included not only some new debt we issued, but refunding or refinancing of some of our existing debt, particularly the Thurston School Modular Project and the new library bonds. We were able to refinance those and achieve total budget savings of $1.12 million for those two projects. So the low interest rate has helped us issue new debt and refinance existing debt. When we did sell that bond a couple of weeks ago, the town underwent a major credit review with Standard & Poor's. And this is important, so we have a couple of slides on this. This was our first full credit review since 2016. We had not sold long-term debt since then, so we have not had a major credit review in that 5-year period. It was our first credit review since University Station came online. And it was a challenging credit review because we were undergoing this during the COVID environment. The credit review does involve a rigorous review of finances and our financial practices. Our finance and town management team made a comprehensive presentation to S&P. We had significant material that we had to send to S&P in advance of the review. So that included our CAFA document, which is our comprehensive annual financial report. Also included all of our budget documents, our financial policies, information on our capital spending and our OPEB. So just a lot of information, very rigorous review. S&P review went through our policies and actual results on our reserve balances, our OPEB efforts, our adherence to our financial policies, what have our collection rates been, what processes do we have in place to monitor our budgets, where do we stand with our debt and liability positions, what has been our response, our financial impact with COVID. So a very, very rigorous review. Happy to report that at the conclusion of that review, S&P did reaffirm the town's AAA rating. Again, that was very important to us to get at this time after not having a review for a 5-year period. S&P does do a write-up of their review that is available on the town's website, but they did cite the following areas contributing to the AAA rating: that the town has a conservative approach to budget management. We have very strong management with strong financial policies and practices, strong budgetary performance and very strong budget flexibility, very strong liquidity, and very strong debt and contingent liability position. This AAA is an excellent rating for a small community like Westwood. It reflects very well on the work done by our town, particularly our select board, who sets the tone with our financial practices, our Finance and Warrant Commission, and our town moderator, who really make sure we have a professional town meeting and budget process. All of our other elected and appointed officials and boards, our staff, and really all of our residents. It takes a really comprehensive effort to obtain this kind of rating for a small town. Our residents should take pride in that rating. And a high rating helps the town issue debt at the lowest possible interest rate and save money for our town. As we said, we just sold some debt a couple of weeks ago, long-term bond at a 1.1% interest rate. The AAA rating is a major component of that. Just one last piece on the debt, on the bond that we issued. We mentioned that we refinanced the Thurston and Library bonds, savings of $1.12 million. So those bonds were outstanding bonds. The original bonds issued for the Thurston Modular Project, $3.5 million bond issued back in June 2009. The library bond, $9.3 million bond issued in March 2011. Over the remaining life now of those bonds, we will save $1.12 million. The Thurston Modulars has 8 years remaining of repayment. We will save $369,000. And the new library has 10 years remaining, and we will save $759,000 in budget savings. So this is savings on debt that was already approved, already scheduled in our budget plans. We now are able to reduce what we have to pay in that debt. It's direct savings for our residents. And as the new library bond was an exempt debt approved outside of 2.5, that means particularly we will raise $759,000 less in taxes from our residents than what was previously scheduled, or about $75,000 a year for the next 10 years. And I will mention that Town Treasurer Jim Gavin has capitalized on low interest rates through refinancing a couple of times to save our residents money. So this refinancing, which had the savings of $1.12 million, he also refinanced the high school bond. That was a 20-year bond. And in the midpoint of that bond, he was able to refinance that. That saved $2.7 million for that bond. 1.1 million, which came to the town, and 1.6 million that went to the state MSBA program as they were partnering in paying that debt. So again, you can really see directly in this refinancing that the work the town does in our financial practices and policies helps us to get the AAA rating, helps us to get a great interest rate, and results in direct financial savings for our residents. One last slide on debt. This just looks at our payoff going forward for our debt. There's two components to our debt: the debt outside Proposition 2.5 and the debt within. Looking first outside, this table shows our payments each year for debt approved outside Proposition 2.5. And for us, that is the high school and library bonds. Each year, the exact amount of that debt, net of any other funding, is included in our taxes. When the bond ends, we stop raising that in taxes. In FY22, as shown in the green, that exempt debt is $1.1 million, with about $480,000 in the high school and $620,000 in the library. We will point out that the high school debt ends in FY23. We are at the tail end of that 20-year bond to build the new high school. That debt will end in FY23. It will end before any new debt comes on if the new elementary school project is approved. So it helps provide some space to bring on that new debt as the high school project ends. Looking now at the debt within Proposition 2.5. As shown in green, our debt within Proposition 2.5 for FY22, $3.1 million. We are in the last year in FY22 of a 10-year, $4.6 million bond that we issued in 2012 for road work. As that bond ends, we will be able to bring on within budget the debt for the new road bond, $4.6 million that was approved at last year's June 2020 town meeting. So we're able to bring that debt on within our existing debt budget. We don't need an override to do so. So an important component of our financial planning is to always be analyzing our debt, trying to capitalize on when debt rolls off to bring new debt on. Looking now at COVID and the financial impact. Our FY22 budget, as recommended by the Select Board and the Finance and Warrant Commission, is a well-balanced budget. We have not had disruption to that budget from COVID. The reason for that is that our town meeting has been planning for disruption or a rainy day for 10 years. Our town meeting has done that by approving very structurally sound budgets. We do not use any one-time subsidies for our operating budgets. We use very conservative revenue budgets. We don't inflate our revenue projections. One particular example of that is with the meal and hotel tax revenue. That was a new revenue for the source for the town a couple of years ago. Our town meeting puts that into a different separate fund. It is not applied to our operating budgets. We don't rely on that money to fund our school or municipal operations. It's in a separate fund and it's used by town meeting vote for capital projects. That means when that revenue is disrupted, as it has been during COVID, the hotel and meal tax revenue is down from the COVID impact. That does not impact our operating budget. Our town meeting has also purposely built our revenue reserve accounts over the last 10 years so that we are on track with financial policies, protects the town in case of any disruptions, and again, helps for that AAA rating. So our finances are designed to make sure we can maintain our essential school and municipal services during a rating day disruption. We do not want to have services popping up and coming down and laying off teachers when you have disruptions. So our FY21 and 22 budgets have weathered the COVID financial impact. We have not had any cuts to state aid. The state has done an excellent job in maintaining their level of funding to communities. We have not had to use our reserve accounts at all to supplement or plug our budgets. There are no plugs in the FY22 budget. We have been fortunate to have outside funding to cover some of the specific COVID impact costs that we have endured. To look at that, we have had significant changes to school and town services through this now 1 year period of COVID. Our town and school departments have had to adapt and pivot to provide services differently to residents. That's been particularly impactful for the schools, who had to go to the whole hybrid model and change their whole operation of providing services. So some additional costs incurred by our school and municipal department include these categories. We've had issues with public safety staffing and what those departments, particularly our fire department, has had to do. We've had to purchase PPE and safety equipment for school and public safety departments. We've had to have technology costs to set up the remote operations that our town and schools have needed. We've had additional facility costs to make sure we're cleaning our buildings. We've had signage out in the community, those types of things. Our health department has had additional costs for what they've needed to do to help keep the community safe this past year. Our elections, certainly again last fall with major elections, there's been a lot of different things that had to be in place to make sure those went as smoothly as they did during the COVID. And we've also had vaccine and testing programs in place, and that has been additional cost. We have had additional funding to provide for all of those additional costs. That has included money coming from the State CARES Act. It's included FEMA money, Federal Emergency Assistance money. The state provided the schools with some specific money to help them reopen last fall, about $675,000. We've also had some additional small grants for our border health and our election. So we've been very fortunate to have this additional funding that has covered all of these additional costs that the town has incurred. So again, our ongoing regular operating budgets have not been impacted financially by COVID. We've not had to, again, plug any of our budgets to cover any of these costs. That completes the background overview of our finances. Now, just to walk through quickly with you the articles that will be presented at town meeting. So this year at town meeting in May, there are 13 financial articles. The first two articles, 1 and 2, are supplements to the current year to clean up our FY21 current year that ends on June 30th. Article 1, we just have one item that will transfer $20,000 from one budget to help supplement an area where we had an unexpected expense. So the DPW street lighting budget had an additional cost of $20,000 related to moving some equipment over on Washington Street when the ICC was taken down. We are closing out some funding from an article at the June 2020 town meeting that's no longer needed to provide for that $20,000. We also in Article 2 have two items to supplement our snow and ice budget for $150,000 and our ambulance budget for $67,500. So $217,500 spending in this article, with $150,000 of that coming from free cash for the snow and ice and ambulance revenue that we use each year for any of our ambulance costs. Article 3 is that main operating budget that we looked at. $101 million. As we indicated, a 3.1% increase over our current year. Again, this is the distribution of that budget by category, with the schools in blue and municipal in red. We do the operating budget in what we call Appendix D within Article 3 at town meeting. And at town meeting, when we come to this article, the moderator will ask you to turn to Appendix D in your town meeting book, and that has all the detail behind the budgets summarized here. Then we have a series of budgets for capital budget articles. Again, for that base school municipal capital, very important that we're continually reinvesting in our equipment and maintaining our buildings. The base capital, as we showed on our previous graphs, similar levels to current year, they are all funded by free cash. So Article 4 is the municipal capital, $1.3 million, same as this year, funded by free cash. Article 5 is the school capital, just over $1 million, similar level to this year, funded by free cash. We have an additional capital article, Article 7. This is capital that's funded with specific revenue. This article totals $505,000. It includes items for our ambulance service and one item for our sewer stormwater compliance. This article is funded particularly with ambulance revenue and sewer revenue to fund those items. This year does include purchasing a new ambulance for $380,000. So this article is a bit higher than previous years, particularly because it includes the new ambulance. Again, funded with ambulance revenue. And then finally, Article 8, that additional capital article I mentioned for some town-wide recreation projects. The proposal is to spend $1,060,000 for two items that I mentioned, pool repairs and the replacement of the multi-turf field at the high school in the back. Those would be funded with meal and hotel tax revenue. The listing of all the projects included in these various articles is in your town meeting book, where you can see each of the individual equipment or building projects that make up this spending. We do have a couple of borrowing articles at this year's town meeting. So to go through these articles would allow the town to borrow for the following appropriations. Article 6 is a sewer capital borrowing for $500,000. This is a project to continue to inspect and repair the sewer system. This borrowing is done through an MWRA program, the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority. They have a wonderful program that they partner with communities to help make sure that people are maintaining and repairing their sewer systems. So through this borrowing authorization at town meeting, we will do this borrowing through the MWRA. They have a program where 75% of this will be funded by a grant and 25% through a no interest loan with MWRA. So an excellent program that they have. We've done this with them before. About every 5 years, we're able to do this with them. And it's a very low cost way for us to make sure we're maintaining our sewer system. Article 12 is an equipment borrowing article, again, similar to what we've had in prior years. This year, this would authorize us to borrow $650,000 for two pieces of equipment. A $250,000 roadside sweeper for the DPW department and a $400,000 multipurpose vehicle for the fire department. These equipment are a bit larger than we would normally do in our regular base municipal capital article. So we propose them as a borrowing, and we would issue, these would be part of a bond that would have a very short-term repayment, less than a 5-year repayment on these two pieces of equipment. Article 13 is the borrowing requested by the School Building Committee, $1.46 million, to authorize that committee to continue their work through the summer on the new elementary school project, the Hanlon-Deerfield School project. There's been a lot of information provided on this. The larger vote on the overall new project would occur at a special town meeting in the fall, in October. This is to authorize the building committee to continue their work from now until the fall, so that they don't get off track in the schedule for that new school project. And then Article 9 is a cleanup of some old debt that was authorized. It's really just a housekeeping cleanup. We would be reducing or rescinding $450,000 in borrowing authorization that a previous town meeting granted that we don't need any longer. So our police station project was approved for a $13.2 million borrowing. When we actually issued the bond, we issued a bond for $12.7 million and received $450,000 in bond premium. So the project's completed, all of our debt is issued. What we're doing here is just going in and taking back or rescinding that $450,000 in debt that's still sitting out there as an open credit line. We no longer need that. This will allow us to close that out. Article 10 is our annual appropriation into our stabilization fund. Our stabilization fund is our main savings account, a very important component of that AAA rating. The bar graph here shows the balance in our stabilization fund over a multi-year period. And you can see in the blue line our target. About 10 years ago, through some one-time revenue, we were able to build this fund up to where it needed to be. Now we do a small annual transfer each year just to keep this account on track with our policies. So our town meeting article in Article 10 is to transfer $125,000 from free cash into this account to allow us to remain on track with our policy with this fund. Again, this is the same amount that we've done the last several years in this article. Article 11 is our article for our OPEB funding. This is our funding in progress for the liability for our OPEB, which is our post-employment funding health insurance for employees when they retire. The bar graph shows the annual funding towards the liability and how much we're able to do each year. You can see on the graph that through some changes in our healthcare plans in previous years, FY13 and 16, we've been able to build this funding up to closer to where it needs to be to address the liability. We now just do a $25,000 increase to that amount each year, and that has allowed us to stay on target with what we're required to do to address this liability. So Article 11 this year, as shown in green, will appropriate $1.49 million from tax revenue to our OPEB liability trust account to, again, keep us on track with this liability. That does include a review of our overall financial information, as well as a walkthrough for the various articles. We appreciate the time and attention that you give to these important issues for the town. I will point out that we have significant information available on the town's finances on the town's website. We've listed some of that here, but on the town's website in our budget section, there's loads of information for people to look through. Again, our select board is committed to transparency with the town's finances, and we meet that commitment by putting all of this information out there for people to go and review. Again, my thanks to Westwood Media for allowing us to make this pre-recording of our presentation. Again, we'd ask you to please join us at this year's May town meeting, which will be May 3rd, Monday, May 3rd at 5 o'clock outside at the Fly Field. We hope to see you there, and we hope you take some time to go through this material. Thank you very much.